Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name's Kate Lee. I am Chief Exec of NCVO, and welcome this afternoon. It's a very special afternoon because we are launching our new strategy. I do just mention that in case anyone's in the wrong webinar. If you thought you were on one of NCVO's amazing training events about risk or something, then you've clicked the wrong link. But if you're here, then you're excited to join us this afternoon to find out about our new strategy. Before we begin, I do want to say a huge thank you. This strategy is the result of months and months of conversations, challenge, testing, collaboration across the organisation and across civil society. Many of you will have provided insights that have helped shape this strategy, and I'm incredibly grateful for your time, energy, and expertise. It is infinitely better for being shaped by your lived experience, and I hope you see that coming through. I'm also delighted today that we're joined by our chair designate, Jude Sheeran, who, alongside the rest of our brilliant board, have been a fantastic sounding board to me and the team throughout this process. There's nothing that can incite fear like handing over your baby to a brand new chief exec to write the strategy. So congrats to them for sticking with the ride. Today isn't just about unveiling something completely new. In many ways, I always think a really good strategy shouldn't come as a surprise. It should really reflect what we know already works, what we've been hearing and learning from you, and where we think we can make the biggest difference and we can evidence that. So our aim in this session is to explain why we've made the choices we've made, what they mean for NCVO and for its members, and ultimately how our ambitious strategy for the future will help create the conditions needed for civil society to really thrive. And I'm going to say a bit more about that. At the end of today's session, we'll be asking you for your feedback. So you're going to get one of those lovely QR code things that we hope you'll scan, and it will remain on the screen and it will be on our website. It would be brilliant if you got a few minutes just to feedback what you think to the strategy, but also, what do you think about NCVO services? What do we mean to you? What do you see us want to strengthen in the coming 5 years? So before we get into the detail, I'm going to hand over to Jude. Jude, there we are.
Apparently I was on mute. Forgive me. Can you see and hear me now? Okay, great. Well, thank you, Kate, and hello to you all. It's a huge pleasure to be joined by so many of you today. I am, in fact, reliably informed that we've never had so many people on any of our webinars ever. So we thank you kindly for your interest, and as Kate has just said, any feedback you are able to offer will be greatly appreciated. We intend to make it worth your while, and I trust that in future you too will remember this day as a valuable one for yourselves and your organizations, and that, after all, is our most important measure of success. Although not the purpose of today's gathering, I would just quickly like to take the opportunity to thank you all for your messages of congratulations and support when I became chair designate just a few weeks ago. I very much look forward to meeting you and your teams during my tenure, and it will be my absolute honour to learn from you and to serve many of you to the very best of my ability. So as Kate has said, today we're launching our new strategy, Together for a Stronger Society. Our basic aim was to address the immediate challenges of our sector whilst helping build a stronger civil society over the longer term. Our first step was to undertake perhaps the most extensive listening exercise in our organisation's 107-year history. We spoke to hundreds of members, partners, funders, trustees, staff, other infrastructure bodies, community organisations and sector leaders. And what we learnt was as clear as it was consistent. Put simply, you need us to work with you and for you to create the conditions that enable you, and by extension civil society, to thrive. And at the heart of our new strategy is a simple but stretching purpose. We exist to strengthen civil society's resilience, connectivity and influence, and Kate will say more about what that means shortly. We heard you, and with an ambitious strategy built with you for you, we are ready to step up and make it happen. The strategy sets out four interconnected drivers that, again, Kate will cover in more detail, that will guide our work in the coming years. All the while, we will maintain access to helpful practical support, resources and tools, again at your request. In fact, during my interactions with the stakeholders that I listed earlier, that was one of the most common requests, that we don't forget to deliver the basics that are so helpful today. Put simply, the challenges facing our communities are too complex for any single organisation to solve alone. And while strategy is critical in guiding our decisions and measuring our success, today is about something much, much bigger than NCVO. It's about what we can achieve together. We must learn each other, continue to learn from each other, and work across boundaries in pursuit of our shared goals. Let us be even more ambitious and confident than ever before. Let us embrace innovation whilst remaining rooted in our values. That's what makes us special, unique in fact. And let us come together to create the conditions for you, and as I say, by extension, our civil society to thrive. We, NCVO, will play our part to the very best of our ability. Of that you can be certain. And we will not rest until our sector is financially and operationally resilient, deeply connected, and influential among the decision makers that we and you depend on. And again, Kate will cover the meaning of what I've just said in more detail shortly. So I hope that we can rely on your partnership as we embark on this most critical of missions together. And thank you for listening to me, and thanks again for joining us today. It's been my privilege to address you, and I very much look forward to reading all of your feedback. Thank you.
Great. Let's get into it then. Woo! But I feel quite nervous now. As we have both mentioned already several times, this strategy has been shaped through a huge engagement exercise. And, we've spoken with members, we've spoken with staff, trustees, partner organizations, funding, other infrastructure organizations, external experts. We've even spoken to non-members. I mean, who knew they existed? And let's hope they don't exist in future, because we want everyone to be part of the party. But we wanted to understand not just what people thought about NCVO, but what civil society itself needs over coming years. Although those conversations were really wide-ranging, some remarkably consistent themes emerged as we went through. So first we heard and subsequently evidenced that civil society is under growing pressure. Many organisations are dealing with immediate operational challenges, like I'm preaching to the choir here, right? But that leaves very little capacity for those organisations to think long term about their resilience or about their innovation. And, the struggle is real. CAF evidence showed that income dropped by nearly 10% across the sector last year. So whilst the civil society covenant creates some opportunity, we also heard that the sector needs stronger collective voices. Individual organisations are doing extraordinary work, but too often that work isn't reflected in the national conversation or in public policy, and many of you have heard me say that since I've become chief exec here. We heard that representation and legitimacy matter. NCVO's ability to influence depends on genuinely reflecting the breadth and diversity of civil society. So we fully acknowledge that a large percentage of this sector is made up of very small organisations, but it is also incredibly diverse. People also told us that the sector feels fragmented. There's an enormous amount of expertise across civil society, but it's not always connected enough. Collaboration, shared learning is often just not strong enough here and where we operate. Data, digital, and AI came through consistently as one of the biggest opportunities and one of the biggest risks facing the sector, with a sense that we just haven't processed it yet here. And finally, we heard something that has always been true, and Jude touched on it. Practical support still matters, and it should remain at the heart of what NCVO does. Members continue to value trusted guidance, opportunities to learn from each other, and services that help them navigate increasingly complex environments. So, plot spoiler, things like our small charities support services, are the data that's held in our almanac, all those things that you really want and value may have a revamp, may have been revamped already, but will remain core to NCVO's delivery. But our value isn't just support to individual organisations. I truly believe our role now needs to be to strengthen the conditions in which the whole of civil society can succeed. And that's why this work matters, because it goes without saying, but civil society matters. Civil society is not an optional extra. I don't know how many times I'm going to have to say this over the next 5 years, but many. It isn't something that is a nice to have that you can wheel out when you're struggling. Civil society is absolutely fundamental to a healthy, functioning democracy. Alongside the media and the legal system, it forms one of the three pillars that holds power to account. It is how people come together to support the causes that they care about. It's how communities organise around local issues. It's about how people exercise their democratic right to campaign for change, to speak up for those whose voices might not go unheard. And that's not only locally, but also nationally for the causes that people care about, that they donate to, that they volunteer for. That is all vital. When civil society is strong, society is stronger, and we can make and should make that case continually. And I'd argue at a time when our communities are becoming more polarized, when misinformation is increasing, when trust in institutions is becoming really fragile, when people often feel really disconnected from one another in many communities, the role of civil society has never been more important, and it has never been as relevant as it is now. No other part of society can perform quite the same role as we do. This country needs us. But the very moment when civil society is facing its most, it is needed the most, it's facing its most unprecedented set of pressure. Demand continues to rise. Financial fragility is affecting organisations of every size, from small community charities right through to some of our big national organisations. The way people volunteer is changing. What people can afford to donate is changing. The workforce is changing. Technology is moving at extraordinary speed. It has enormous potential, but it's also creating new ethical, practical, and regulatory challenges for us that we're not yet strong enough to address. And every week we're hearing from organisations that are having to rethink how they operate because the world around them is changing so quickly. I spoke to a chief exec of a charity just about 2 weeks ago, whose entire service model depends on reaching young people through social media. Overnight, changes in policy have meant that they've had to rethink how they deliver essential mental health support to people under the age of 16. And she described it as being as significant for her organisation, the change in legislation, as COVID was for them. And they're having to pivot without resource, without time, and without support. Alongside all of this, we're seeing increasing pressure on the environment of which charities operate. We hear organisations telling us that they're becoming more cautious about speaking out because they're worried about their funding relationships, often with local government. We're hearing concerns about regulation, which doesn't allow charities to operate at the speed or with the agility they need now. We hear about concerns about long-term sustainability of charities. And sadly, we are hearing almost weekly and daily about charities that are literally under attack, and operating in unsafe environments to deliver the needs to deliver to the needs of the vulnerable communities they serve. Now, taken together, these are isolated problems, These are the symptoms of an operating environment that is becoming increasingly hostile to civil society. So the question for NCVO becomes, how can we make the greatest long-term contribution to strengthening civil society? And that's what our new strategy is setting out. It's it's pretty big, it's pretty ambitious. So, what does it say? Everything we've heard points to one clear need, which is we need a powerful, vibrant civil society. Not just we as civil society, but we as the society operating here in England, in the UK. But today, that resilience is being eroded by growing systemic pressures. That's the challenge we've decided NCVO needs to respond to. We want to see a future where civil society is truly recognised as the beating heart of our communities and the backbone as a fair and inclusive society. It's a future where its value is understood, where its contribution is recognised, and where organisations have the environment they need to thrive. And that brings us to NCVO's purpose. We will create the conditions for civil society to thrive. Those words are incredibly important, and I appreciate how big that ambition is. But our job is not to solve every small issue facing every charity. I wish it was. I wish we could do that, but we can't. Our job is to create the conditions that allow civil society to succeed. Sometimes people describe organisations like NCVO as infrastructure bodies. I've never liked that term. I think it makes us sound like we're kind of simply in support of charities behind the scenes. Sometimes people talk about it as a scaffolding. I think the term infrastructure, I think about it quite differently. Infrastructure for me is the environment in which charities operate. It's the policy environment, the regulatory environment, the financial environment, the relationships and networks you build and hold, the partnerships you develop. It's about your confidence to speak out. It's the connections that enable organizations to learn from one another. That is your environment, and that is the infrastructure you need to hold you. It's the environment that means that charities can do what they exist to do. Now, ultimately, I want NCVO to work with the sector to create a future where it's much easier for charities to succeed because the conditions around them actively support their work. And we're going to do that by strengthening three things. Jude has alluded to them. We are going to strengthen the resilience of this sector, the connection of this sector, and this sector's influence. Now, these aren't just the three themes of this strategy. They are the three tests. They are our three impact measures that we are going to apply to everything we do over the next 5 years. Every decision we make in NCVO should strengthen at least one of them. Because if civil society becomes more resilient, more connected, more influential, then we will have created the conditions for it to deliver impact, not only today, but for generations to come. And that's the impact I want NCVO to have. So, resilient, connection, influence, the impact that we're going to have. You're going to hear these words a lot over the next 5 years. I think the team, I promised them they didn't have to have them tattooed upon their bodies, but they have already got them on their screensavers and on their notebooks and on their mugs and on their pencils. They will be well known in NCVO very shortly. They aren't just the themes of our strategy. They are the way we're going to measure our meaningful success. So let's start by just exploring them a little bit. Resilience, how have we defined that? When we talk about resilience, we're talking much more than just whether an individual organization can, survive its next funding challenge. I do know that's where a lot of your heads are at. But we're talking about creating an environment where an organization can withstand change, it can adapt to uncertainty, and continue to deliver against your mission over the long term. For NCVO, resilience is going to mean asking questions like, what kind of operating environment does civil society need? What regulation helps organizations rather than hinders them? How do we make it easier for charities to innovate? How do we help organizations prepare for challenges that they haven't even encountered yet, particularly in the AI and tech fields? Ultimately, I'd love to create an environment where it becomes genuinely difficult for good organizations to fail, not because we've rescued them individually, but because they helped build a system with us that supports them to thrive. Secondly, looking at connection, one of the strongest messages we've heard, and I've seen this in real time since joining NCVO, is that we have incredible expertise across this sector, just the most brilliant brains, the most brilliant data, the most brilliant research, but we are really fragmented. There are thousands of brilliant organizations, and you're all doing remarkable work, but very often we're doing it in isolation still. Sometimes they're solving the same problems independently. Sometimes we all have one piece of a jigsaw and no one has either the picture or the will to bring the jigsaw pieces together. And sometimes that means that we are competing for attention. Sometimes we know that we're approaching government with different messages when one shared message would have been more powerful. Now, I increasingly believe that one of NCVO's greatest strengths is our ability to connect that brilliance. Not because we have all the answers ourselves, we definitely do not, but because we are uniquely placed to bring people together. It means connecting charities with each other, connecting local organisations to national organisations, connecting civil society to government, connecting charities with business, philanthropy, universities, researchers, technology experts, and other communities. And when we make those connections, this whole sector can be greater than the sum of its parts. And finally, what do we mean by influence? If we were honest, this sector, and this will not surprise you because I've been ranting about this quite a lot, is still significantly undervalued. And it's quite hard at times to work out why. We know the contribution it makes to the economy. NPC estimate that the impact economy is practically 15% of GDPR, which is 428 billion pounds. It is a huge sector. We know we contribute to health, education, community cohesion, equality, and opportunity. But too often, those contributions aren't recognised when major decisions are made. We are not always in the room. And sometimes, even when we are in the room, we aren't listened to, which is crazy when you consider that we bring the voice of lived experience into those spaces. Now, our ambition in this strategy is to change that. Influence is not simply about lobbying government, it's about ensuring that civil society expertise, evidence, lived experience shape the decisions that affect people, the communities, the groups, and the causes that we exist to serve. It's about helping the sector speak with greater confidence. It's about improving public understanding of the role that civil society plays. And it's about making sure that this sector is recognised as a vital partner in building a stronger society. We are not an afterthought. So every piece of the work we're going to undertake over the next 5 years should strengthen one or more of these things. We are going to be constantly asking ourselves whether we're making civil society more resilient. Are we making it better connected? Are we increasing its influence? And if we can demonstrate that the answer to those questions is yes, then I'm going to believe that we're moving in the right direction. So, our strategy model. Those three outcomes tell you, and I'm going to go for the very boring Simon Sayek model here, but the why NCVO exists, the center of the circle. The next concentric ring is, of course, what we are actually going to do. And then the how we're going to do it is going to take some time. We're going to work that up with you guys. But let's think a little bit about the what we're going to do. We've organised our work around four strategic drivers. A little bit of jargon. We always love a little bit of jargon in there. Debates about pillars and drivers. We love all that in this sector. We are going with drivers because they reinforce each other. A stronger membership gives us better evidence. Better evidence strengthens our advocacy. Better advocacy creates a better environment for charities. And a stronger, more innovative operating environment increases the resilience of the sector. So, like everything connects, you can't kind of take one of these out, it won't make sense. So, let me just quickly walk you through each one. The first is our membership. That won't surprise you. We love our members. Our members are going to remain the absolute foundation of everything we do, partly because you give us all our credibility and our understanding about what on earth's going on out there. It's what gives us our legitimacy when we speak on behalf of the sector, of course. You provide us with the insight and the evidence that informs our policy work. It's how we stay connected to what's actually happening on the ground. And perhaps most importantly, it's one of the biggest ways that we can build resilience across civil society. And whether that's through our training, our guidance, our support lines, our webinars, our consultancy, our trusted suppliers, our events. If you feel like you're being marketed to for a moment, you are, but just suck it up. We provide you amazing opportunities for peer learning. Our membership offer already helps organizations become stronger every day. We could do loads more of that. Of course we could. But there is way more we could do. We want organizations to see NCVO as indispensable, and we need more organisations to do that. We want every member to understand exactly why they're a member and what value they receive and how their membership strengthens the wider sector. We also want our members to become our membership to become far more representative so that we can at the moment today we represent about 10% of registered charities, and that is something we are really proud of. But we could speak far more confidently with greater influence if we represented maybe 20, 30, even 40% of the sector. And imagine that strength that would give us if we're sitting across the table from ministers, regulators, major partners to just be speaking on behalf of you more. So that's the ambition. We're also going to make sure our offer reflects the different needs of different organisations. Like, we are really aware that a small local charity needs something very different from one of our big national organisation members. Our foundations and trusts need something very different from the other infrastructure bodies that are also part of our membership. And our membership should recognise those differences while bringing everyone together because we've all got this shared purpose of a stronger civil society. The second driver is very exciting because it focuses on data, and I am a bit of a nerd. Evidence and AI. You're not allowed to talk about anything without mentioning AI. We already have an extraordinary asset that we hold at NCVO. Through our members and our reach and our partnerships, we already have access to a huge amount of knowledge about civil society. Our challenge is now using that knowledge much more effectively. We want to move beyond simply reporting what's happened, which of course the almanac, which many people love, it's been a staple of NCVOs, but it does report historically on what happened in the past. We want to move beyond that to become much more predictive, to identify emerging risks, to spot trends earlier, and to help government and the sector prepare for what's coming next. And at the same time, we know AI is transforming the world around us. It presents enormous opportunities for charities and for our beneficiaries. But it also raises some profound questions about ethics, regulation, inequality, harm, and public trust. So our role at NCVO will not be to simply encourage and support more organisations to use AI. It's also going to be to help civil society use it responsibly safely and effectively, and to ensure that the sector has a strong voice in shaping the wider debate about how these technologies develop and how they are used safely, responsibly, and well to the benefit of all our beneficiaries. The third driver is advocacy and strategic influence. It won't surprise you, it's in there, another staple of NCVO and definitely one of our strengths. The difference here is that we're going to become much more intentional about where we focus our energy every week. I am asked to campaign on a really important issue affecting a different part of the sector. So even in the last kind of 10 days, I've been asked about an issue to do in health, an issue to do with migration, international development, something from the heritage sector, something from the environmental sector. And all those causes are incredibly important. But if we try to do everything, we really do risk doing very little. And while we're always going to play a part where we can in opening influential doors for you to step through and do your own policy and advocacy work, we want to focus on the issues that will improve the operating environment for the whole of civil society. And there'll be questions like, how do we protect charities' independence as well as build a closer relationship with government through procurement, commissioning, really important ways of building a relationship, but that also keeps us independent. How do we create regulation that enables rather than restricts you? How do we strengthen public trust in charities? How do we ensure that future governments, future leaders, I mean, I'll be doing that daily, but anyway, never mind, recognise the value of civil society? How do we prepare the sector for political, technological, and social change? Now, if we get those foundations right, if we can get NCVO in the right rooms to drive that kind of change, hopefully every organisation in civil society will benefit. And finally, innovation. This is an area that I'm very excited about. Because throughout history, like our last 100 years or so, NCVO has helped shape new ways of working across civil society. And I think now is a moment to really rediscover that role. The challenge facing society is becoming too complex for any one organisation to solve alone. We know that. So we want to work out how can we build deeper, meaningful partnerships, not just across charities, but with businesses, philanthropy, academia, researchers, government, internationally. We want to test new models of delivering civil society and bring best practice from across the sector and around the world. We want to help you experiment. We want to experiment. We want to work out how we can genuinely learn quickly and share what works. And we want to also support you in being really honest about what doesn't work before everybody makes the same mistake. Innovation isn't about chasing novelty. It's about finding better ways for civil society to achieve greater impact. If we can help create partnerships that wouldn't otherwise exist, if we can test ideas others can learn from, if we can help the sector scale what works, then we'll be creating exactly the kind of conditions that this strategy is all about. And everything comes back to that purpose, creating the conditions for civil society to thrive. Now, we've talked a lot this afternoon about resilience, connection, and influence, but the real test of the strategy is whether it reflects what organizations are going through every day. Does this strategy make sense to you, our members? And I'm going to hand over to Lee Brimacombe, who is our Chief Influencing Officer, to introduce you to two of our fabulous members. And they have helped us with thinking and shaping this strategy. So for that, I am incredibly grateful. Over to you, Lee.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kate. And it's lovely to see you all today. I'm really glad that we've got about 15 minutes or so now just to really have a good conversation about how some of the themes we've been talking about today as part of the strategy, how they are experienced by some of our members. So I'm really delighted to be joined this afternoon by Ken Canu, who's the Chief Exec of Help on Your Doorstep, and also Amanda Naylor, who's the Chief Exec of Volunteering Matters. Ken, we're very grateful. Ken participated in a member advisory panel that we set up to support the strategic review process. And also someone from Volunteering Matters, part of Amanda's team, also joined that panel. So hopefully they will see a lot of what they've been talking about reflected in today's presentation. So I'm going to start us off, and maybe I'll start with you, Ken, if that's okay, with a bit of a broad question. And we've talked a lot this afternoon about needing to create the conditions for civil society to thrive. I'd love to find out from you a little bit about what you think thriving actually looks like from where you're sitting and for your organisation.
Thank you. Hi, Lee. Yeah, so I guess uh, for a start, so Help on Your Doorstep is an organisation that exists to try and tackle and challenge um, uh, to tackle and challenge inequalities that impact on people in society. So I'm always a little bit cautious when talking about thriving for the sector, but I think if we're talking about it as a counterpoint for just surviving,
Mm.
I think it feels quite clear to me that that this involves much more than just the balance sheet. It involves much more than delivering outputs for funding, and it's about how we as an organization, as a sector, are able to be part of the change that we want to see for individuals and communities. So I really do think that NCVO's got this right, because my I guess view of what thriving means for us sits within those three uh, anchors that you've described, which is resilience, connection, and influence. So for us, thriving means having enough stability to stay true to our mission, and enough connection to work with others to try and support that, and really importantly, to have enough voice to help change the conditions that that residents people are living with, the sorts of issues that bring them to us in the first place. So for us, if we're able to assist people to face what feel like overlapping pressures of financial hardship and poor housing and isolation and health issues, um, you know, um, and doing that in a context where there's really weak trust with institutions, to help them overcome that and improve their circumstances, whilst at the same time being part of the positive change to the system that undermines all of this, then I think that we are getting close to what I would call thriving.
Fantastic. I think absolutely the ability to have impact and to feel confident in your impact is really important. What about you, Amanda? Does that feel familiar to you?
Absolutely. I'm building on what Ken said, really. It's hard to talk about thriving and optimism, but Volunteering Matters did its own 5-year strategy we released last year. And we start by saying volunteering is an act of optimism. It's
Mhm.
a quiet rebellion against the idea that one person can't make a difference. And I think you could change those words to say working in civil society is an act of optimism. Is the idea that one organisation can't make a difference, that quiet rebellion against that. But what we do know is we work so much better when we work together.
Mhm.
And what I loved about the strategy actually from NCVO is my favourite part was around advocacy without partnership lacks scale, evidence without legitimacy lacks authority. And that really struck me because it's around systems thinking. This is a strategy built on systems and people and organisations coming together. And at Volunteering Matters, we work with communities and we're trying to build communities from their needs up. And it feels very similar that NCVO are building the sector from organisations up. And we know that communities thrive when people don't simply receive support, they contribute to creating it, and it really feels co-created for me. And I think a thriving civil society in the future won't be built organisation by organisation. It's not about who survives and gets first past the finish line almost. I think it's going to be built relationship by relationship. And those relationships have to be kind, and we have to champion each other's work, not tear each other's work down. And we have to come together around the things that really matter and important. And that takes communication. And this feels like the first part of that dialogue, really, that the organisation, that NCVO is having with the rest of the sector. And I'm really excited by it.
Yeah, I think that sense of being in the voluntary sector is about coming with a sense of optimism is something that really resonates with me and with us as an organisation. I can see it's getting a lot of positive love from our participants today, from the attendees. So that I think that's resonating with a lot of people. And I think what you were talking about, the idea of, our resilience coming through this idea of building new connections and collaborations as a way of doing things slightly differently in the future, is really important. So I'm wondering, like, in sort of for you, from a perspective of voluntary matters, where do you think the biggest opportunities for new and innovative collaboration comes from?
I think there's so much. Every government department is talking around community and place. And when we think about Pride in Place and funding initiatives, we're leading towns and cities of social action. All of that is bringing large organisations and small organisations together, and thinking about what is our place within that. And quite often, I've been a CEO of a small organisation that's been very place based and local. I'm now in the strange position where I'm CEO of a national organisation, but we work through partners locally, and we have very locally place-based services. And I think there's a place for everybody. And we just need to have conversations around that. And funding doesn't help. Funding makes us compete with each other. It makes us prove how we're better than each other when we put in our procurement. And maybe there's something around saying no to some of that, and getting together early, and trying to set the agenda ourselves. And that's ambitious. But we're ambitious, like NCVO are ambitious. And I think it is partly in our hands to do things differently. And I'm excited to get around the table with others who want to have conversations about how we do that, really.
Yeah, agreed. And again, I think this really naturally links into some of the things you might want to talk about, which is, that idea of this local place-based connections, and how do we bring together organizations that might not maybe traditionally have had a either formal or informal relationship, partnership. There must be some opportunities there, I think, on a local level that you think would be helpful for the future too.
I think there are lots of opportunities, and in fact, over the last few days, I've been working with sector colleagues where we've been trying to pull together a shared sector response to how civil society contributes to the government's agenda on neighbourhood health. And I think in that process, we've started to understand a bit of the challenges, a few of the challenges around doing so. I think one of the things that is very apparent is that this sector isn't just one block. We're not homogenous. We have different relationships with communities, with funders, with statutory bodies, and it feels really important that the any sort of partnership arrangements that exist recognize that. I think at the same time there is a really clear stated ambition that we move away from downstream engagement with this big health challenge that we've got, and we need to start connecting up better around wider social determinants that affect people's health. Health. But the problem that often gets in the way is that our statutory partners, they are really burdened with target tracked downstream indicators, and at the same time being asked to engage with civil society, with the voluntary sector, but in a way that isn't enabled, that isn't resourced, and isn't performance tracked. So they're often having to make the choice between what gets measured and what doesn't. So I think a really clear opportunities to help make sense of that. And I think it's making sense of it for the sector in terms of how we can move away from a very general value case to a quite strong investment case. And I think it's also helping make sense of it for our statutory partners who, they admit that they struggle to engage with this diverse, very spread out sector. So it's about helping work with that.
Yeah, great. I think there's a really good point, isn't it? Like the diversity of our sector, the sheer scale and size of it is enormous, and that plurality is one of our biggest strengths. But in many ways, it can also be a weakness for us, right? Because lots of us are saying similar or different things, and so that idea that Kate was talking about earlier in terms of how do we build that stronger position to have a collective voice is going to be really important. And we've started a lot of that work with things like the A Million Acts of Hope campaign, or the work that we do on Small Charity Week to build these coalitions to bring people together around a single set of messaging. I'm wondering, as we move into doing more of that in the future, obviously we're going to be wanting to create single points of view as we go into conversations with government. I'm wondering what, perhaps, Amanda, if there was one thing that you wanted government to better understand about either our sector or specifically for you about volunteering, what's that one thing that you want people to sort of understand and rally around to help make sure that that point of view is heard?
I think when we're talking about government, there's always a two-way. We need to get our house in order as well. And I think starting with us, really, I think too often we think that influence comes from having the loudest voice or individually being around the table. And I don't think that's the case. I think it comes from the strongest evidence, the deepest relationships, and the confidence to speak collectively and trust others to speak on our behalf. And government doesn't need hundreds of disconnected voices. And we're not always going to agree, but we need to have the dialogue, I think, before we expect government to give us a seat at the table. In relation to what I'd love government to be thinking around volunteering, really, I believe volunteering is core infrastructure. We should start with the solutions in communities. And we invest in roads because they connect places. We invest in digital because it connects data and information and leads to knowledge. And I think we should invest in volunteering and civil society as a whole because it connects people, and people are our most important resource. And so let's invest in humans and the way they can support each other and connect.
Wholeheartedly agree. I think everyone else does too. How about you, Ken?
I guess just going back to this exercise that we've been doing around health is recognizing that there is a chain reaction from central government guidance and frameworks to what happens on the ground. But we know that if we are going to make a difference there, we've got to find a way of making residents' voice central in what we're doing. We've got to find a way of making communities central. So I think there is something about understanding that in order for change to happen, it's got to start locally. And in order and the voluntary sector can be a massive ally in making that happen.
Brilliant. Now, I'd love to talk to you both all day. I feel like we probably could, and we'd put the world to rights, but we do need to come to a close. So I just want to finish by asking one question, which is if we were to be successful in achieving and delivering this strategy, I'm wondering what that one thing is for you each that you think would have changed in 5 years' time. What's that one thing that would be different that would really signal that we'd been able to deliver this strategy? Why don't we start with you, Amanda?
Oh, that's a big question, isn't it? I
Sorry.
want you to achieve all of it, and I want to be on the sidelines championing it and seeing actually the bit that I contributed to, the bit my organisation got behind, and really kind of did that, and feel like it's a joint celebration that we're celebrating together. And I think it is for me. that connectedness. I think that's where we start. And if we've achieved that in 5 years and we're a more connected, more supportive, more aligned sector, I think that would be a huge step forward in terms of achieving the other two areas of goals that you've got.
And Ken?
So I think you've made such a good start. I've really enjoyed being involved in being developing the strategy. I'd like it to feel the same as it has for the last 6 months for the next 5 years. I want it to feel that it's quite visible and usable to those of us, working with local and regional partners. And I wanted to feel like, not just like a strategy, but like a movement that we're all part of.
That sounds good to me. We will make sure that happens on both sides. So thank you both so much for this brilliant discussion. Really appreciate your time and for the efforts that you've put into supporting us to develop the strategy as where we are today. So just to conclude today's session, we are now delighted to be joined by NCVO's President, Baroness Delith Morgan. For those who don't know her, Delith is a former government minister and CEO of Breast Cancer Now. And Baroness Morgan has served as NCVO's President since 2024. We're incredibly lucky to have her. And I'm going to invite her now to share her personal reflections on the importance of this strategy for the future. Thank you. Do we have Delith?
Thank you.
There she is.
Thank you so much, Lee. And I'm unmuted. Hurrah! I just want to say how delightful it has been to listen to the presentations and how much I loved what Amanda and Tom just had to say. It's been a real pleasure to join you. And I think this is a very important moment for NCVO and NCVO's future. So just before we finished, I just wanted to leave you with a few thoughts on why I think this strategy is absolutely key to strengthening our future in the sector. And as Lee's just said, I've been involved in charities and civil society for a long time, some very tiny organisations and some larger ones. So I've seen how the sector has changed and developed over the years. And over my time working with and in the sector, I've seen time and time again that the sector has an extraordinary ability to keep being there, to keep showing up, even when the circumstances are really very difficult. And every day we know that charities, volunteers, community organisations continue to help make lives better for millions of people. That is what we are all about. The often overlooked impact that civil society has on our lives is absolutely special. And it's, as Kate was saying, the evidence is absolutely there and we need to articulate it. It's unique. It's something worth celebrating. But it's also something that we have to be mindful of, that it's worth protecting, because none of us should take a strong civil society for granted. I think we feel that in our bones now. A strong civil society really creates a stronger society. The voluntary sector helps hold communities together. It gives people a voice. I mean, that is so important these days. It creates that belonging that we need to have in our communities. It tackles problems that no single institution can solve on their own. And at its best, it doesn't just respond to change, it shapes it. That's really true. I've seen it happening. It makes a massive difference. We can make a massive difference. And that's why today matters. Today isn't just a strategy launch. It's an important moment for us all to pause and ask that question. What does the sector need now? These are really challenging times. What kind of support will help the sector to thrive in the years ahead? And today's session has laid out really clearly where NCVO will focus its energies and efforts. And that's so helpful for all of us. But we all have a part to play. We're not just passengers. The challenges facing civil society have become bigger and more complex, and they are all connected in so many different ways. No single charity, no single organisation can tackle them alone. No infrastructure organisation can solve everything on their own. The sector needs people to come together, as we've just heard. So what I hear running through this strategy is a recognition that the future won't be built by one organisation acting for everybody else. It will be built through partnerships, through genuine listening, through bringing people together, and through giving the sector the confidence, the swagger that it needs to shape its own future, and the resilience, the connection, and the influence organisations need. Those are really important words for us. The connection and influence that organisations need as strong foundations on which to achieve their goals. My hope is that when people leave this session today, they'll be thinking about NCV strategy, and they'll be thinking about, where do I fit in? What can I contribute? Because there are so many ways to help play a part in all this. Whatever your mission, whatever your size, wherever you are, as Kate has so clearly articulated for us, the truth is the future of civil society can only be secured by thousands of organisations, millions of volunteers, and countless people choosing every single day to be optimists, to work together for something bigger than themselves. If this strategy helps create the conditions for more of that to happen, then it will have been a success. And ultimately, as we've heard, this isn't about one organisation. It's about making civil society, making sure that our civil society remains strong and able to face whatever comes next. I think that's something it's really worth getting behind. So thank you for listening, and I will now hand back to Kate. What a great chief executive, and how lucky we are to have her. So great to hand over to her now.
Thank you, Della. That's just fantastic. Swagger, that's a word we don't use enough. I want more swagger. I want the sector to have more swagger. Can that be a measurement? I think that would be great. Well, that's it. Thank you, folks. I hope you found the session useful. In a moment, there's going to be a QR code on the screen that you can take to send some feedback to us about what you think. Please do fill it in and let us know your thoughts. Before I let you go, I do want to remind you that we have 4 vacant trustee positions on our board of trustees. So if this strategy has excited you about what's going to come next for NCVO and you want to be part of it, please do put your hat in the ring to be one of our trustees. Or if you know someone really fab, you can nominate them if you're one of our members, but probably tell them in advance that that's what you're going to do. Do visit our website. There's loads of information on there around the strategy as well. Not only a kind of fuller version of the strategy document, there's blogs on what this strategy means for small charities, what it means for volunteering, and what it means for NCVO's commitment to equality, diversity, and inclusion. And in the coming weeks, there's going to be more blogs on there about things such as the AI challenge and how does NCVO fund its work. So keep an eye out for that. We're going to carry on with kind of launching the strategy and talking about the strategy right through to our AGM in very early November. So loads of time for discussion and debate. But all that's left to say is a huge thank you. We're looking forward to speaking with you more detail over those coming months. And we just can't wait to work with you all and make your environment an easier place to operate in. But otherwise, a huge thank you for everything you do. Take care.